it's just as important to learn what you don't want to do as it
Yeah.
is to learn what you do want to do. Let those experiences serve you. The windshield's a lot bigger than the rearview mirror. Let's look forward, not backward. Your past has helped form you, but it doesn't have to define you.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I like to honor our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things personally deem very expensive time. 24 hours been offered to every one of us. What we do with that 24 hours, man, will it'll, as they say in church, it'll expose your sins, if you will. And the other aspect is that the journey is the creator that has deposited some wonderful stuff into Doc, and we want access to that stuff. His wisdom, his knowledge, his insights, all of those things. And so we want to honor him because we know he has to become vulnerable to share some of those things. And so thank you so much for coming, Doc, to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks so much for having me, Ken. More importantly, thanks for all you do. We need a lot more of you. You're spreading some joy around the world.
Thank you so much, man. And as a listener, you know my first question, and I love that question because it came from corporate America. Like I said, and corporate America trained us to have our elevator speech. And so here is an opportunity for the listeners to get a summary of what you do, your servanthood, if you will. And my question is, how do you serve mankind?
Well, I serve my own kind. I help empower leaders to transform their personal experiences into powerful business stories that inspire action, drive growth, and create lasting impact. I want everybody to have their story shine and told around the world. That's why I love platforms like this podcast.
I'm so excited to have you here because those folks like myself and others, all of them that are usually on that spiritual journey are entrepreneur. They have an opportunity to become an entrepreneur as that journey walks through because it's designed that way. And so guys, those of you that are listening, we have someone that has some insight into that arena and I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to put it up front. We're going to get you the link so you can get in touch with Doc and get into his space because he has workshops and stuff like that to help you to tell your story, if you will. Doc, as our customs here is to go back into the beginning of our beginnings, this the space we call our childhood, the location of the family. The family, as I said, is this little science office, if you will. And we're going to learn a couple of things, our communication skills. We're going to learn about, start developing our behavior, our attitudes, our all of those things, limited mindsets, all of these wonderful cauldron of beauty things that are going to be taught right here. What was your family unit like?
I had a wonderful family. My parents were extraordinary people. I mean, we were poor, but we always had food on the table. And I was blessed to have both my mother and father at home all the time. My mother was an actress and a stay at home mom. My father was a librarian. So I grew up hating reading. I always hated the public library. It always smelt funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. And there was always some freaky homeless guy by the bookshelves that thought he was a vampire. I always hated that. We moved around a lot. My parents were very supportive of me. I'll just, if you indulge me, I'll tell you a story. I was speaking in India to a school, got all the kids pumped up. This is much later, obviously. The kids were coming up to me afterwards, all excited, and I look, and there's a little boy, and he's got tears in his eyes. He's about 6 years old. I notice he's missing his left arm, Ken, and he looks up at me. He's like, "How can I succeed?" And so I crouched down to his eye level. I say, when I was your age, I went to 18 different schools before I was 12 years old. Everybody called me s- s- stupid because I stuttered. And eventually, I went to a school where a teacher, she worked one on one with me and she would sing things to me. And I found I could sing them back without my stutter, kind of like the movie The King's Speech. And eventually I lost my stutter and I became a swan. But I looked in that boy's eyes. I'm like, isn't it interesting that the little boy everybody used to say was stupid because he couldn't talk right now gets paid ridiculous sums of money to travel the world to do what? And the boy got the biggest grin on his face. He's like, "Speak." I'm like, "Don't let anybody ever tell you what you can't do. Everything is possible." So, I had my share of challenges, like everybody that you've ever profiled has had their challenges, but I've been blessed to have a lot of support in my life, and I hope I'm providing that type of support to the people that I serve now.
Yeah, the principle, Doc, is all things are possible to him who believes. So all things are possible to that believing individual. The limitation is in you, not anything else, because you and I are designed as creators, and as creators, you can create anything. There is no limitation. I mean, look at the moon. We're on the moon. We're driving cars. We're doing all kinds of stuff. You and I are talking from different countries. So there is no limitation except for what we put on ourselves and what we have been told and what we have believed, because it says it is the believing individual that is the one that puts the limitation, whatever you believe, man. So don't believe the lie that they tell you you're precious. Doc, here you are. You had a great foundation minus the moving. And I'm sure the aspects of the moving sometimes tap into our insecurities and something, because you're not able to land for a long time to develop some heavy friendships and all the different things that the connections, if you will. In all of that moving, as you stated to that young man, how did that show up in your life as an individual? What was your conversation, your mindset as one who is a nomad, if you will?
Yeah, the thing that I love about your podcast, Ken, is you show people about like, well, how do we deal with these different things? And you always have a choice. Even when I was a teacher, I said every day I have a choice. I can be Darth Vader, or I can be Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can be the darkness or the light. I can look at moving as a horrible thing, or I can look at it as an opportunity. And I always looked at it again. I had very supportive parents that always encouraged me, and I saw the opportunities. I feel now I was so blessed because I always was meeting new people. I had to learn how to be extroverted in situations, even though I'm probably naturally introverted. And so I learned through that. Hey, if I want to have friends, I need to go out and make. It's one of the things I always tell my students. If the easiest way to make friends is to first be a friend, and I was very blessed throughout my life to have those experiences.
Yeah, given it will be given to you, whatever you give. So here you are, here's this young man, stutterer, and what a gift that your parents gave you that you are able to utilize that, because I've interviewed so many people and that was a trauma to them. And here is this young individual takes these situations, if you will, and began to utilize it for his good. As you are doing that, what did it do to you? What type of being was inside started to manifest, if you will, as you are living with that type of approach, if you will?
I've always been blessed with a positive attitude. I see all the possibilities. My youngest daughter recently, she had a teacher tell her she couldn't do something, Ken. And I said, well, when a person tells you you can't do something, what they're really saying is they can't do something. And don't let other people put their limitations on you. I've never allowed anybody to put their limitations on me. And, one of the things my wife enjoys about me is one day I told her, I'm like, you know what? I've decided I don't want to be president of the United States. And she looked at me and she's like, what I love about you, Danny, is that you think you can.
Yeah, not the qualifications, the gray hairs after that.
I would love to be the ex-president. I want to be the president of the United States because I could golf anywhere, get paid millions for my memoirs, but being the president doesn't sound too fun.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. Not dealing with all that interesting stuff. As you're moving through life and you're heading into adulthood, if you will, we're moving through the synchronicity of living, and we have this main crossroads. Um, Doc, I used to say to my kids when my kids, I'll just want to say the story. When my kids would come to me and say, I can't do that, I banned that word. I said, that word is not allowed in my house. I would tell them, say, at this moment, I do not have the knowledge to accomplish what I need. And I said to them, go and find the knowledge to accomplish that. Don't ever tell me you can't. And that was my antidote in my house that I had told them. But here you are, you heading into life, if you will, getting to go into your space. And we have one of the major crossroads that we stand at as a individual, as a human being, and that is college or not. I want to know which way you took, and I know where you went, but why did you pick the field that you picked?
That's a loaded question. First of all, I completely agree with you. I've always thought can't is one of the worst four-letter words you can say. There's a poem. You'll like this poem, Ken. Christopher Logue, a British poet. He said, come to the edge. We might fall. Come to the edge. It's too high. Come to the edge. And they came and he pushed and they flew. A lot of my students, sometimes they just need a push, and that's what's going to help them fly. Now, to address your question, okay, so um, when I was 17, all I wanted to do was go to Yale. I had the grades, I had the test scores, I had the letters of recommendation, I had the activities, and I was a pretty good high school football player, and I was getting recruited to play college football. And all I wanted to do was go to Yale University. And I remember I got my rejection letter on a Tuesday, and I went alphabetically down a list, Ken, and looked for the very first university that did not have a football team. And I found American University in Washington, D.C., and that's how I chose my university. I decided to, and then my parents told me, well, you're going to have to pay for it yourself since you're not going to play football. And it turned out it's kind of an interesting life, Ken, because it turned out to be one of the greatest decisions of my life. At that point, I was living in Colorado, so I went east of the Mississippi River. I didn't know anybody. I loved Washington, D.C. I worked for a congressman. I worked for the largest homeless shelter in the United States. I wound up becoming a journalist. I got to cover President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I just loved all the different opportunities. I would have never had that had I not made that spur of the moment decisions. That's a long answer to your short question, but there wasn't a lot of thought to where I chose or what I chose to do. But it turned out to be a really good decision.
No, I love the reason why I ask those questions because you get to hear some of the richness of what's behind it, and all that you just discussed and talked about is that richness behind that decision. And a lot of times I say that I ask those questions, Doc, to allow the individual to understand that life is a series of decisions that one makes at these crossroads, if you will. Sometimes we have an opportunity to think, and then sometimes we don't. And like you did, you just went down, in your state at that time in your mindset. That was perfectly okay. I can do that. And so you went with what you felt was right, and it doesn't matter how else it showed up. But that's what it showed up in you, and you made that decision. And that's what I'm trying to get across to people. Sometimes it's just what you feel, and everyone is going to look at you and say, that's kind of crazy, but it's what you internally, that's the compass that you need to use to guide you. You are going to have to make some decisions that is going to piss mom and dad off and everyone else, but you have to make what's right for you. And sometimes it's just as benign as that. And it creates a life for you that you'll never imagine. Here you are, Doc. You got a chance to be all over the place, get dabbling in all kinds of different arenas, and as you dabble with all these different things, you're meeting different personalities. You were hanging around with some of the power brokers, if you will, at the time, and you're getting to meet both classes, all the classes of people. How, and you weren't Doc yet, how was Danny doing with all of that going around him? How was he, the individual, soaking up all of that and showing up on a daily basis?
It was wonderful. I loved it. You know, for a long time, I wanted to be president of the United States. And so that's why I decided to work for the congressman. And I always phrase it this way. In high school, Ken, I cleaned toilets at a health club. And if ever given the choice between working on Capitol Hill or cleaning toilets again, I would much rather clean toilets than ever work again on Capitol Hill. And it's good. That was a great lesson. I tell this to my own kids. My son is going through this stage right now where I said, it's just as important to learn what you don't want to do as it is to learn what you do want to do. Let those experiences serve you. And I was blessed, and I got to work with all kinds of fascinating people. I have great friendships that I have for life, and I don't regret any. I'm not a person that lives in the past at all, Ken. I always tell my students the windshield's a lot bigger than the rearview mirror. Let's look forward, not backward. Your past has helped form you, but it doesn't have to define you.
Yeah, that's the key. And that's one of the things about Threads of Enlightenment is that, I'm trying to let them know the past doesn't, it's the past and you can create a new future. It is up to you what you want because that's what we are. And how do we create is through the process of our thoughts and reprogramming the mind and all the different things that will come into play, how you do that step by step and so forth. So now as you're doing all of that, I always tell people, life happens, we moving our way, you get married, you have kids and all that stuff. And then one day something happens to us to kind of like, tug us on the shoulder and said, I need to talk to you. And how was your progression and that day, if you will, that introduction where you had the opportunity to go inward, to begin to question the program, to become the observer, if you will, in your life, and began to ask those deep questions as to what pattern is this, where from, how, and so forth in your life.
So I was blessed to be a journalist, Ken, because I was asking questions all the time. And for some reason, I started asking some of those questions to myself. I had a great job offer from an editor of a major daily, offered me the city beat for $16,500 a year. And then a friend told me that they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles in the inner city for $25,000 a year. So I searched inside myself and I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, Ken, for the high
Yeah.
pay. It turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life because I fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And what I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner. But what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. Even when I'm working with CEOs, a lot of the strategies I'm using are the same strategies I use with kindergartners on how to get kids working together. So
Yeah.
I loved it. It was great. You talk about mindset. I had the mindset that I was going to be the great white hope going in, saving the community. And I was really blessed to work in Compton, California with primarily African American Latino students. And most of my colleagues were elderly African American women from the South. And I have to confess, Ken, I don't know how much I served the community, but the community really gave me a whole new perspective on the world. And that served me really well.
And that's was the question I was going to ask you, because here you are amongst some of the youngest masters, if you will.
Hmm.
And kids and the elderly are some of the masters that
They
will
are.
assist you, because I know when I had my kids made me a better man. These boys, they taught me all kinds of stuff now. So that was my question as to your impact, the deepness of that impact, the severity of it, how it formed your mind, what it did to your being, because those things will change your being. Talk to us as to when you were there and you were exiting, the type of impact that it began to form and began to break you down and put you back together in this beautiful piece portrait as you're spending time with that population.
Yeah, I learned to take my job seriously, but don't take myself too seriously because I ain't all that, neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for a week because those little ones will set you straight. I had a little girl, LaShonda, raised her hand one day. I'm like, LaShonda, question. And she's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks for doing that, LaShonda. I ain't all that. You know, this is what I love about you, Ken. This entire podcast is just kind of showing people, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
People have one of my favorite speakers, and he's also a great human being, is a guy by the name of Les Brown. And
Yeah.
he line because
Met
when
him.
he was at his lowest, he has a line that I just think everybody needs to hear. He said, because he was thinking about suicide, and he said, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And there is so much wisdom in that statement because when you think you're at your lowest point, God has this really ridiculous sense of humor where he's laughing because he knows the ending and you're going through your struggle. And it turns out that you needed this struggle to open up this incredible opportunity that you had never even known about. I look at my life. I mean, you recited it's Mark 9:23. If you can, Jesus said,
Yeah.
everything is possible for one who
Everything.
believes.
Yeah.
Earl Nightingale says we become what we think about.
Uh-huh.
Uh, again, you have a choice every single day. Surround yourself. I encourage everybody listening to tell their friends about this podcast. This is part of the solution. This is the light. I was watching a horrible show on TV last week called The News, and it totally depressed me. It put me in a foul mood And there's no reason. I have an uncle who watches the news all day, and
Yeah.
I asked him if the president had consulted him yet. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you watch so much news, I figured the president was gonna call you to find out what he should be doing next." I mean, you watch all this news, if you're not gonna do anything about it, all it's doing is upsetting you.
Yeah.
Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's the decision every single day. My wife, I've learned this from my wife. I'm convinced she doesn't even know who's elected president because she doesn't pay attention to any of that. She watches comedies. She watches I Love Lucy. It puts her in a good mood. She don't want to be around the negativity. And that's a choice. And so, you want to feel good, surround yourself with good.
Yeah. Absolutely. They say you are what you eat.
That's
And that
exactly right.
means all the data that you put into you, you're eating that, and you are what you eat. And so you have
That's
to
right.
be very careful as to what you put inside your being, because as one focuses on that, that's what you're going to bring to pass. And so that being of who we are, we're an incredible being. We are meditating all day long. I tell people, you're meditating, you just don't know it. You don't think about it. But that bill or that thing that you're dealing with all day long is in your mind, and you're just repeating it over and over, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. You're not looking at the solutions. You're not stepping outside of that to get an answer. So here you are, Doc. You've been through some master class with the kids and all the things and the nose trimming. I love that. They're just beautiful, beautiful people. As you're moving through all of that, you began to learn and you're getting all a taste of everything. And I tell people everything we learn in life, every job you do, your principles that will be unearthed in your former days, if you will, your latter days. As you are moving through your life and you're now beginning to formulate what you have today, your servant aspect, and about understanding the stories that we talk to ourselves and tell ourselves. Talk to us about how that began to come together, if you will, in your life. And because I said we are the first ones, and all the stories that we believe is what the people tell us, and this is it, guys. What story do you want to believe? The
That's right.
negative ones are the ones you want to tell yourself as you began. So, Doc, how did you begin to navigate towards this area where you are located at today?
So in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, Ken, and it turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could focus on the woe is me story and all the negative things that happened, but I'm a positive person. I'd make that choice. And I learned a lot from that. First of all, I learned that my wife is my soulmate. She's an extraordinary human being. She stood by me when nobody probably should have stood by me. Incredible person. Second of all, I learned that money can go just like that. It's not my
Oh,
end
yeah.
goal anymore. Third, I try not to judge other people anymore because if I was somebody looking at what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize if you don't know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to admit. But the more I read the Bible, I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus.
I
I
could tell
didn't
you a
want
couple of them.
to, I got lots.
I'm one of them too,
Well,
Doc. I'm one of
you're
them.
you're in good company. Derelict community. And fifth, I didn't want to file for bankruptcy, and my accountant said, "Well, you have to make this much more money this year in order to avoid bankruptcy." And so I was a professor at the time, and so I started speaking on the side, and I hit his number right on the number. Well, the next year, Ken, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And so basically, during one of the worst economic downturns, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which attracted the attention of a lot of people who wanted me to coach them. And I got to tell you this, Ken, I resisted coaching at first because you need to know this about me. I'm very obsessive compulsive. I have very high standards for my students. I actually won't let you fail. I will be on your back until you succeed. And I found that since I'm working with entrepreneurs and C-suite executives and business owners, they're highly motivated people and they do the work. And it's actually been the most gratifying thing that I've ever done. I love watching most of the people I work. Yes, I've worked with some famous people on their speaking skills, athletes and politicians and televangelists and stuff like that. But most of the people I work with are entrepreneurs trying to convert their leads into clients. And I think speaking is the fastest way to grow your business. And there's nothing more gratifying to me than finding a person that's nervous as heck, that has stage fright, that doesn't think that they have a very compelling story, helping that person create a presentation and help them develop it. Because I'm not a person that believes in one shot training either. People that hire me know, well, I'm like a dog. I'm going to be with you forever, just so you know, because I'm going to check in, and because that's what's fulfilling to me, Ken. I mean, yeah, it's great that I get paid, but the fulfillment I get is watching a person that I have a guy I worked with 3 years ago, Jason. So we started together 3 years ago. And I always tell people there's two ways you get better at speaking. First of all, you got to watch lots of speakers. So I watch comedians, I watch politicians, I watch televangelists, I watch them in front of big groups, in front of small groups, in front of men, in front of women. Here, I'll give your audience a ninja speaking strategy. I watch a lot of televised award shows because when the person wins the Academy Award, they only have 45 seconds to connect with their audience. I want to see how they connect. And most people, they waste their time. They get up there, they're like, I want to
Yep.
thank God, I want to thank the Academy. Nobody pays attention. It's stupid. But every now and then a person does an excellent job. So a few years ago, there was a guy by the name of Joe Walker who won the Academy Award for Best Film Editing. Now, this is Hollywood. All the important people are in the front, Ken, the actors. The camera scanning the crowd. You can see they're not paying attention. This is film editing. And Joe
Yeah.
Walker walks on stage and he's British. He speaks very slowly and deliberately. He gets up there and he says, a lot of people don't know this, but when phrased properly, the term Academy Award nominee can be used as an insult. Well, now the camera's scanning the audience. You see people leaning in like, what's he talking about? And he says, for example, yesterday I got in an argument with my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, well, Academy Award nominee Joe Walker. All of a sudden, you see everybody laughing hysterically. He gets off stage. Denzel Washington wants to meet him. Sandra Bullock wants to meet him. Brad Pitt wants to meet him. Time magazine said it was one of the highlights of the Academy Awards. That's the power of connection. He did it in, I mean, expert class, master class. So the first way you get better at speaking is you watch other speakers. The second way you get better at speaking, I've been blessed with lots of wonderful mentors throughout my life. And one of them was a guy by the name of Jim Rohn. And Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Translation, you got to do the reps. I always tell people, you want to get better at speaking, you got to speak. I mean, you got to, even the smallest towns have Lions Club, Optimist Club, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club. They got schools, they got churches, synagogues, temples, chambers of commerce. Jason, a 22-year-old I was working with, he's like, oh, I don't know anybody. I can't get on the stage. Debbie Downer, he's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Finally, I said, hey, Jason, do you have Facebook? He's like, yeah, we're going on right now. Facebook Live right now. And he gets all nervous. We had just put together his 45-minute talk. And so I forced him to go on Facebook Live. He did his talk. One woman from Ontario, Canada, accidentally watched him. And guess what? He sucked. And I told him, do it again next day. I didn't watch him the next day, but I'm sure he sucked. But he didn't suck as bad as he did the first day. Well, here's the reason I tell his story, Ken. He's been doing this every single day, including Christmas, for the last 3 years, goes on Facebook Live every single day. He now has a community of 6,000 people. And last year, he sold them almost $1 million worth of products. And that's what he's excited about. And that's all fine and good. But what I'm excited about is look at him as an example, his consistency. He did the work. And so this is where I get my gratification is watching a person who, I mean, Jason's a perfect example. I used to say this to my students in Compton. I said, you know what, kids, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourselves. I believe in
Yes.
all of you. They only give me the best and the
Yeah.
brightest. Let's go out and make this world a better place. And I believe that. I believe that. And I think my parents said those types of things to me. And it's really important because I worked with a lot of kids, Ken, that came from rotten environments and just a lot of negativity and people telling them what they couldn't do. And I just
Mhm.
really believe just those whispers into people's ears like, hey, you can do this. Ken, you're gonna be incredibly impactful. You're gonna have a family, you're gonna lead that corporate job. You're gonna start a podcast in Thailand that's gonna reach people around the world. You're gonna affect lives that you never even know that you affected. I mean, you start telling people that, they start they start believing it, I believe. So,
Yes.
yeah, I don't even know if that answered the question, but, I get
Yeah,
excited
it
about
did, Doc. It did. I mean, everything is story. Everything is a story. Everything. What your mom and dad, what religion tells you, what everybody tells you, and stuff like that. Corporate world, everybody, it's all stories. But what resonates with you as an individual? As I said, I'm a Christian, and I love that story because, I remember reading where it talks about in Psalms, that God showed the people his acts and he showed Moses his ways. And so these are two different things that are happening with this same God, two different relationships. But everyone has to make the decision, like you said, Doc. What type of relationship, what type of story do you want in your life?
Yeah.
And then you do what you need to do to make that happen. But sometimes, here we have a God who saw the potential in this guy. And he was complaining, no, I can't talk. I can't do that. I stutter. I can't do that. He's like, no, I got you. I picked you. And he's complaining about everything. And that's what we do when someone sees it like you. Jesus saw the disciples way before they even saw it. He tell them that you are going to do this. You're going to do that. And those guys like, you're going to be fishers of men. They're fishing. What do they know about fishers of men? What does that terminology mean for them? They don't know nothing about it, but they trust him enough because something happened to them because they immediately dumped all their work things and followed this guy. And so he told them a story and they believed, and just what we do, Doc, as you did to this young man. And that is an impossible thing in some cases, that people hold on to that story. And what we're trying to say to them, you gotta let it go. Let it go. Let's give yourself a new story to talk about. So here you are, Doc. You got a chance to put this thing together, and you mingled with some of the top ones. Some of these guys, you mentioned their names and stuff like. I had all their back in the day, their tape sets, and all of that kind of cassette tapes, listening in my car as I was a marketing and salesperson when I start telling people stories. And so here you are at this present day in your life. You have done so much. And all you guys are listening to us. I'm going to give you those links so that you can go and see some of those testimonies that are there for you to get a grasp of what Doc is talking about and the changes that will happen to you. All you young entrepreneurs, I see the data. Go, man. Get into his space, become a disciple. Disciples are the only one that I've ever read in any book anywhere that changes the world. Those are the ones that will ask him all kinds of questions. What do you mean? How do you mean? What? And he's going to look at you and go, yeah, I like this one because you're digging from him, and he's going to be honored, and he will usher you to where you need to be. And so I want to talk to you. How did you put this together, your team? And what you do, because that process, if you will, that you have set up so that those that are coming to your workshop can come in and talk to them about some of the modules, if you will, and what they would get as a result of coming into one of your workshops.
Well, Ken, first of all, you're a better pimp than anybody I've ever been around. I appreciate you, my friend. You can sell me anytime. This is great. I formed a company called the Well Crafted Story Workshop with my two buddies, Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and Dave Ward. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background is in academia. Coach Jimmy was an actor on Broadway, and Dave was an attorney. So he's our behind the scenes guru, the Wizard of Oz. And Coach Jimmy and I used to work for a company that was probably the number one executive training company on the planet that really showed executives and entrepreneurs how to put together presentations. And what they would do is they charge these people $15,000 for a 2-day workshop with us. They'd put 50 people in a room, and Coach Jimmy and I would help them put together their presentations. And I had some problems with that. First of all, when you have 50 people in a room together, I can't really personalize what we're doing
Uh-huh.
because people come from different industries. I didn't like that. Second of all, I've never believed in one shot training. A lot of these people, yes, we were able to help them create what we call a well crafted story. Politicians would call this a stump speech. In superhero movies, they call it an origin story. you can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. This is a speech that you're going to deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences to help grow your leads and get more clients. I don't think you can master that in a couple of days. And we had people that would leave our workshop and 3 months later contact us and say, it's just not converting. And I'd say, well, why don't you send me a video of your speech? And they'd send me a video. And I'm like, well, I can tell you why. You have the right elements, but you didn't put them in the right places. And, you know,
Uh-huh.
sudden these people, the light bulb goes off. I'm like, well, what if I'm like, put it to here and tell me how it goes. And they're like, wait a sec, I have leads now and I'm converting those leads. I'm like, yeah, they wouldn't have gotten that in a 2-day workshop. They needed some ongoing coaching. This is why I always tell my clients, I'm like, "You got me for life. I mean, whenever you need me, you just call me because I wanna make sure you're succeeding." And then third, Ken, they always train we had to train people to share their most traumatic story, and there's 3 reasons why I don't like doing that. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad things happen to them. I don't think we need another sad story. I think we need more stories of hope. Second of all, teaching you to create a story that you're going to share again and again with new audiences. Do you want to relive the worst moment of your life again and again? I mean, I got a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's told that story to over 1,000 audiences. I don't know how he does it. I couldn't do
Yeah.
that. And then third, I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as an objective. I believe the people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling that story, now those are crocodile tears and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. And so I like to keep light. And, I'm a former school teacher, so everything has to either rhyme or be alliterative. And so Jimmy and I came up with the 5 C's process to creating a well crafted story, which is before you write anything, you have to have clarity. And then once you get into your speech, you have to connect with your audience, you have to teach content, you have to have one clear call to action. And finally, you have to have a powerful emotional close. And if you do those things, I guarantee you, you're going to convert more of your audiences, and that's really the only measure of our effectiveness. I mean, I think it's great when people say, "I got a standing ovation," or people telling me I'm a great speaker. I'm like, that's all fine and good, but the only way we measure your effectiveness is how many people in your audience are deciding to take the next step with you. I mean, that could be an unpaid next step, like subscribe to my podcast or book a free phone call with me. It can be a paid next step, like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. But we're going to measure your effectiveness by how many people are you converting. So, for example, we worked with a gentleman named Richard about 3 months ago, who's a very successful retirement planner. And Ken, uh, the way he gets clients is twice a week. He has about 15 50-year-old couples come to a steakhouse and he gives them a free steak meal. And then for an hour, he explains his services. And he said that he used to notice the husband usually is kind of sitting like this, like, what's this guy
Yeah.
it's gonna take from me. And so the way he used to start his presentation, he'd say, "Mine." And by the way, whenever I talk about my clients, Jimmy's the one who loves to name drop. I believe in discretion, so I always give him different names. So we're gonna call him Richard. So Richard, he used to start off his presentation. He says, "I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've made my clients over $1 billion. I worked with this famous person and this famous person." And I said, "Time out, Richard. What are the 3 most important elements of real estate? Location, location, location. It's all right to brag, but you're doing it in the wrong part of your presentation." And so we rewrote his talk. So now the beginning of his talk, instead, he's talking about the very first client he booked 30 years ago. And Ken, it's basically a comedy of errors. He makes every mistake in the book. I have no
Uh-huh.
idea why the person invested money with him because they had to have total faith in him. And this was what Richard said to me a week later after he had done it a couple of times. He noticed that the guy that used to be doing this is now patting his knee and laughing hysterically. And he's gone from booking six, he averaged about 6 of the couples out of the 15 booking a consultation coming into the office later to see him. Now he's averaging 12 of the 15 couples. And this is how we're
Oh,
measuring your effectiveness, is how
yeah.
many people are actually going to take that next step. Another one of my mentors was a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar, and Zig, he's passed on unfortunately, but towards the end of his life, he wanted to find out his effectiveness as a speaker, and he was blown away. Out of every 100 letters he had received, only one of them talked about his speech. The other 99 talked about his products, his tapes and his books and his seminars. And he realized, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that it was that ongoing relationship with people that had the effect. And so that's why it's so important to me to have an ongoing relationship with our clients, because I just don't think you learn anything in one shot. And you can be inspired. I mean, Zig
Yeah.
had a lot. It's like, motivation. It's like bathing. It's temporary. That's why we suggest you do it regularly. And that's what I do with clients is, hey, I'm checking in. We're making sure that everything is on course. It's kind of like an airplane. An airplane drifts off course, but we have to correct its course from time to time. Long answer to your short question.
Yeah, it's the compass, that compass that keeps us. What is your driving force? Your in corporate America, where I was trained, it was called mission statement.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yep.
know, so I have a question, Doc. And as we are closing this podcast, you have a mic in your hands. That mic is plugged into the 8+ billion people that is here on this planet. All of us, you have our attention. What would you say?
Well, probably what I say, whether I was teaching my little ones or my older ones, as my students left my classroom for the day, they always had to hear the same refrain. They probably got sick of me saying this every day. I said, remember, kids, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. So let's go out, do the right thing. Let's make this world a better place. And that's what you're doing with this podcast, Ken. And I appreciate you allowing me to have this platform today. And as a thank you to you and your listeners for having to bear with me, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that we take our clients through on how to create your own well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of putting together an effective presentation and shows you exactly where and why to put things in your presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you're going to have a formula that's going to create an ongoing flow of clients that convert for you. That's at freestoryguide.com. And again, thank you so much for all that you do, Ken. I just really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Doc. We're going to make sure that they have access to that. And as always, I want to thank you so much for offering you to us. And thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks. God bless.
God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.